And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm so happy to be hosting this town hall tonight on behalf of Common Strategies, as well as our partners with the Black Environmental Leaders. We're here tonight to kick off our Black Landscapes Matter series, and our first topic will be the Cincinnati Police Gun Range. It's a very important topic. There's been a lot of controversy around this issue, a lot of movement in the past couple weeks. So I will pass it now to David Wilson, who is a member of the Black Environmental Environmental Leaders Association, to give us a little bit more background about your organization and Black Landscapes Matter series.
Thank you so much, Celeste. And just first off, I just want to just acknowledge the amazing just passion and energy in this room. We have had the chance to have discussions with Daronce and Carlton of the Heights previously, and are just blown away by just the incredible energy that and advocacy that is going into this issue. So my name is David Wilson, along with Samia Bray. We are co-facilitators of an organization called the Black Environmental Leaders Association, which actually just became a nonprofit late last year in 2020, but started really in this space around conversations that deeply affect communities of color, where there is lack of representation within the environment. So our mission, the Black Environmental Leaders Association mission, is that we stand as stewards of the natural and built environment through collaboration and partnership to raise awareness and advocate for environmental and economic justice. And we do that by working collectively to provide a forum for community environmental education, which serves as the basis of a deeper understanding and commitment to all the areas within the environment: land, water, air, transportation, and energy issues that impact our economic bottom line through the lens of health, diversity, inclusion, and equity. So this conversation right here is the start of what we are calling Black Landscapes Matter, where these are issues that we are hoping to dig into as an association across the state. And are starting with Cincinnati, but are also hoping to have these conversations in other markets, including Columbus, Cleveland, Akron, Youngstown, Warren, Toledo, and Dayton over the next couple of months. And so when we had first launched this conversation, really the issue at hand with the gun range in Lincoln Heights rose to the surface immediately. And we're just really, really pleased to be a part of that conversation and to share that space, and hopefully to provide the megaphone for this issue, across the state. So, like I said, we are honored to be here and look forward to convening this very important discussion.
Thank you, David. And so we'll move to Commissioner Reece. Recently, there's been a lot of movement at the county level around the gun range issue. Could you give us your position on the gun range, some solutions, and your ties to the village of Lincoln Heights?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I have to really thank you, Celeste, and Councilmember Daniels, and so many others who have picked up this mantle, along with the mayor of Lincoln Heights and the council, to say that you're not going to give up on this issue. We're commemorating 100 years of the Black Wall Street in Tulsa. And I think this is the year when folks are saying, listen, we will not stop, we will not give up, and our stories will be told. And when you think about Lincoln Heights, I just want to take one step back. I'm in my office and we have some good news, real good news, I think, because of the advocacy that has come out of Lincoln Heights, one of the first Black municipalities in the country and in the state of Ohio, and certainly would be in a different position had not been the highway that divided it, and some of the industry that came in and took the industry out and left a community without the tax base of the industry. But today, I'm very pleased to announce that one of the things we've been working on in addition to this is also Wi-Fi. And it's unfortunate that Lincoln Heights had not had public Wi-Fi, something, that basic. And so today we announced $150,000 to start off at Lincoln, the village of Lincoln Heights. And the idea came from the village of Lincoln Heights. Councilwoman Linda Childs Jeter reached out to me, and we were able to get a grant, and the board passed it. So I just want to give that good news. The other thing is we're dealing with American Rescue dollars. And in the proposal, we haven't voted yet, but in the proposal, it has $5 million to have available for moving and shutting down the gun range in Lincoln Heights. So we just wanted to say that there is some movement. A lot of times when we're in these type of situations or movement situations from the Heights movement, sometimes we have to let people know along the way the wins that we have to give us energy to keep fighting for the bigger picture. So I'm the newest member of the Hamilton County Commission. And let me say that President Commissioner Stephanie Dumas has been leading on this issue before I got here, on the issue of the gun range, and Bishop Bobby Hilton is our chief of staff, and he'll be speaking a little later about that. But they went out and looked at what are some other locations, working with Councilwoman Jan Michelle Lemon Kearney, because we know that it's owned by the city of Cincinnati, so you can't make a move without that. But I think the step that we're making is that, okay, it's like chess. We've made a move. We put we're going to put $5 million on the table, and gets us hopefully moving toward getting rid of it. The gun range, I think, is very important to note. Now David's on, and I thank you, David, for having Black environmental leaders, because we don't usually talk about the environment when it comes to the Black community. A lot of times when people say, oh, we need more green space, we need a lot of environmental things cost us, it's extra, and we don't have extra money. So when you go into our communities, we don't have the best environmental conditions. You don't hear about us until you hear about Flint. You don't hear about us until you hear about the gun range. And so this is an environmental issue. It's also an economic issue, because the gun range is there. It also hinders Lincoln Heights to be able to bring in industries, because who wants to bring in an industry with the gun range right there? It's also a safety issue, and it's a health crisis. So when we give the declaration that racism is a public health crisis, I think step one is the declaration, but step two is where we are now, which is the implementation. What are you going to do about it? And so I think this is historic. It's the first time that money has been put on the table. We have now the data as it relates to folks coming in from a health perspective and showing the data. We've got environmental people coming in showing us that it's an environmental issue. Economically, like I said, is showing that we can't move forward. Who wants to build new homes next to a gun range? Who's gonna build new homes there? So we're in a situation where a municipality can't grow. Because if you have that right there in your backyard, you just don't have growth. So that's where we are. I have, for many years, as a state legislator, wanted to get rid of, the gun range. We didn't have this type of collaboration. We didn't have the grassroots, the elected officials, the environmental people, all of the different entities, city and county. We didn't have all that. We were just starting off saying it's wrong and how do we fix it? So I think it's been a lot, and a lot of it is attributed to the work that you guys are doing on the ground, and the data that you're producing, because it's undisputed. And so I think we're at a point where we could get there. It is going to be important for city council. Who is this next city council? They're going to have to vote for this. And so this is a good time to be asking a lot of the people that are running, where are you? Where is this on the priority list? Or even the people that are there. I mean, we could probably get this done now if we can get the the city to move and bring the entities to the table. I know we're looking at maybe expanding out in Colerain Township, and I know that Township has to agree to that and work with that, but we've got the sheriff now. We've got the county commission now. We've got some money on the table now. The city actually has some money that they can put toward this. We've got, the federal Senator Sherrod Brown, United States Senator Sherrod Brown. We got all these folks on the table. We should be able to get this done. And so I'm looking forward to working with all the folks that's been kind of out there before I got here. And hopefully I can add something to help get this moving on quickly. So I just think that's where we are. And I think that, you just got to keep the heat on and start getting some deadlines, if possible, so that we can get this done. But we can't do it without the city of Cincinnati. They own it. And, even if we put money on the table, if they're not willing to make a move, it's going to be very difficult for us.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Reece. So you guys heard that. We'll be asking you if you're running for city council, if you're running for mayor, what's your position on this, so that we can continue to improve the community of Lincoln Heights. Given the update from Commissioner Reece, Bishop Bobby Hilton, as Commissioner Reece stated, you are the chief of staff to the President Dumas. And why has this been a priority for her? And what is your office doing to continue to move this conversation forward?
Okay, and first of all, let me congratulate you, Celeste, and Daronce, for being some youth in the community that are standing very strong for a very, very important issue. You guys are just doing a wonderful job, and I congratulate you for working with the mayor of Lincoln Heights and the other council members and everyone else, because this has been an issue that's been around for a long, long time. And I can say that and I'm here tonight on behalf of Madam President Stephanie Summerall Dumas. And upon becoming her chief of staff, this is probably the first assignment she gave me to really look into this situation regarding the gun range in Lincoln Heights. And it was a perfect fit for me. It really was a perfect fit because I let everybody know I was born in downtown Lincoln Heights, so Lincoln Heights is my home. And even after my parents moved out of Lincoln Heights. I was 5 years old when my parents moved out of Lincoln Heights, but all of my cousins, all of my families remained in Lincoln Heights. So I was back out there all the time. And I can recall the first time playing with some cousins up near the apartments up on the hill and hearing those gunshots and hitting the ground. Well, what was that? I can recall that to this day. And that's been well over 50 years ago. But I recall that, the horror of hearing that. And this is on Madam President's heart, because she understands it, that it's a horror to the youth. It is an environmental issue, as Vice President Reece was saying. And, how many soil studies have taken place? Over 70 years of gunfire, over 70 years of lead in the soil. How many studies have taken place to see how much of that lead is in the soil and runs down the street? We know as kids play in the dirt, we play in the mud. How dangerous is that lead out there, And I was able to hear even how the students from Lincoln Heights Elementary, they're in school and they can hear the gunshots while at school. And so this is an issue that should not be in place. We just do not believe if other people were occupying that space out near that gun range, we just do not believe that that gun range would continue to be there. But as Commissioner Reece stated, this is the moment. This is the time to get something moving. As I began to meet with different individuals and we went and studied different locations for the moving of the gun range, I was really surprised at how reluctant and how non-caring some people were about getting this thing moved. And we had to literally begin to get some messaging together to let them know, wait a minute, this is a health issue. It's more than just a disturbance. They were thinking about, oh, the people are just being disturbed. They're hearing the gunshots and they're just being disturbed a little bit and they can deal with. This goes far beyond being a simple disturbance. This is an environmental issue. It's a health issue. Who knows how many of those children growing up hearing those sounds are taking in something that they never get help for. You know, you go over to, I can remember being in Israel, and we know what happens in Israel a lot of times, bombs hitting all that, and they have all of these facilities to comfort and to counsel those kids because of just hearing explosions. But how many counselors do we have in the area for the children in Lincoln Heights that grow up hearing gunfire all the time? Why was it so easy for people just to say, it's nothing? But I think we're beginning to get somebody's attention. I think the work that you all have done, the coming together of the county, the city, Lincoln Heights, Evendale, Woodlawn, I think everybody coming together is really beginning to get this thing to move. And I'm so happy that the county made a major effort, as Vice President Reece said. It still has to be voted on, but to have $5 million on the table, that speaks loud. That speaks loud. And it's now time for the city to step forward. And what better time for this to happen? Because we're living in a period of time. This is a major period of time that's going to be written about in history with the pandemic and everything else that's happened. It's a major period of time. We have 3 female commissioners. It's a major period. We have a Black police chief in Cincinnati. It's a major period. We need to really get some things going, because this is going to be written in history and it will never be erased. But it's a wonderful thing that can happen if everybody just comes together and let's get it done.
You're muted, Celeste.
Sorry. And then Commissioner Reece, when will you all vote, take the final vote to approve the $5 million?
Yes, so we are planning to vote no later than July 1st. There's other things in the plan, different tweaks. We've had public hearings, so it'd be great to have, we've had our public hearings, so it'd be great to get emails from you guys. Obviously we're on board, but I think it's great for the record to show that there is support for that. So we're looking at voting prior to July 1st. July 1st would be the latest, but it could be as early as, I believe the 17th, could be as early as that. So there's some other things that we're trying to, each of us get to, tweak, and things that we want to put in there. One of the things that we really are excited about is the $40 million that we're putting toward affordable housing, and also not just affordable housing, but helping people stay in their house and home mortgages. So those are some things, and we're doing some tweaking and adding, and we should be, like I said, by July 1st. But I think it'd be great if we could get some emails. And then once this is passed, we have the money there, but now we've got to take some action. And I think on the county side, we kind of ready to go. And there may be a need for us to have when people say, city and the county, can we work together? This should be one of the projects on the table. And so maybe we need to look at a group that can be put together with the city and the county to try to get this, done. So once we get the $5 million on the table, one of the things that I wanted to look at possibly is having a joint group that could be put together with representation of stakeholders that would have I always want to put an end date. I don't like to study things to death, but something to come back and say, look, in 90 days, this group from the city, the county, the stakeholders come back in 90 days with how do we make this work? And if you have all the stakeholders at one time together, then it won't be, okay, I'm trying to call this person and then they're trying to call me, and then so and so. The city said this, but the county said, no, it's the county, no, it's the city, no, it's somebody else, no, it's the township. Get everybody together in a collective way and put a 90-day window on it and say, look, we're putting $5 million on the table. We're ready to go. We don't identified a possible location. City, you put your people up. County, we put our people up. Community, Lincoln Heights up. Colerain Township folks on the table. Police on the table. And let's come out in 90 days with, here's how we do it. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. How do we move the button once we put the $5 million. So we're at a $5 million just sitting there. And I'd like to see some movement, and I know the board would like to see movement. We're not voting on $5 million just to sit around. All of us want to get this thing done. So maybe that, helps if we put something like that together and have a 90-day, come back to us with recommendations. And then hopefully with the brain trust and minds in one room, maybe we could come back with something that can be voted for by the city and voted for by us. So that's kind of my thinking on it. But yeah, we're hoping would be no later than July 1st that we'd be voting on the proposal.
Great, and CEO from Closing That Health Gap, Renee, has joined us. Thanks, Renee, for joining us. But my next question will be to Carlton Collins, part of the Heights movement. You've been leading a lot of the work around the environmental justice and the environmental studies around the gun range. Can you just tell us where the Heights movement is on all of the studies and what have been the findings?
Yes, thanks, Celeste. So, when we started this everything, and just heads up, there's a 2-month-old right next to me. But when we started this process, we were focused on this fact that, and I think Bishop Hilton said it well, right? When you think about 74 years of you firing guns, what does that look like in terms of environmental remediation that's required, right? And it should be said, right, that there should have been a process in place to account for potential environmental damage, right? Everybody has just been looking at it as a noise pollution issue for all of these decades. And I think the environmental piece is a huge part of that. But Bishop Hilton, I'm glad you even referenced, what is the process for healing for those who have dealt with, living with these gunshots. And I always say that gunfire is the soundtrack to our lives. If you've grown up in and around Lincoln Heights, it's what we deal with, right? So there is, so when we're talking about the environment piece, one, we need to check out lead. We also just need to see exactly how far the exposure goes, because the community of Lincoln Heights, in terms of what water runs through, we provide the water to GE and we provide water to Laughlin. We just happen to be that main source or hub, right? So figuring out where does that lead contamination go? Sorry, that's where does it go? But then also making sure, we're checking soil samples, we're checking even further areas around the gun range. And just for deeper context, right? On the Woodlawn side, we're talking about maybe 50 yards from where they shoot from. And then on the Lincoln Heights side, you're talking about 50 to 75 yards before you get to that first building in Oak Park. So we're not talking about a large distance away. And then also where they shoot is at the top of the hill, and then everything else is downhill, right? So there's some natural runoff that happens there as well. So definitely wanting to be able to test like soil, but also any opportunity or potential of getting into groundwater. That's very much so important to us as well from an environmental perspective. But the bigger thing, because not everybody lives close to it, correct? I think the bigger thing is looking into the behavioral mental support that is necessary for our kids, right? That's where we started this as, right? When you mentioned the playground, I, as the director at the time, for the summer camp after school program, I'm sending my kids out to then hear gunfire on the playground, right? And not having the ability to instruct the team that we hired to come in and support the kids on what the kids were dealing with. Like, as you see some of these behavioral issues, or as you see some of the just academic deficits that come, with toxic stress. or, ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. So there's such a deep conversation that still needs to be had. And this is an amazing panel. I know everybody has stuff to put in, so I'm gonna drop this nugget right here. It's great to have the gun range moved, and I'm unbelievably grateful for Hamilton County Commissioners and just the leadership that they've shown in this process. One, to hear us, and then two, to recognize our humanity, right? Those are just two things that haven't happened when you're talking about historically with this gun range and its presence. But now we also need to have a conversation with the city of Cincinnati as well as Evendale about, this land, a community benefits agreement, in incorporating or at least understanding how the gun range harmed us. We should also be, active participants. And this is for Lincoln Heights and for Woodlawn. Active participants in regards to what happens on that land next. Do we have a piece of ownership? Does that go to our tax base? All of those things are viable conversations that still have yet to be had. It's easy to get behind the gun range when you're talking about, when it's no dollars and cents, right? When you're just talking about, oh, this is great, it's advantageous. But there's some things that can happen with that land that are extremely profitable for the city of Evendale that Lincoln Heights and Woodlawn should also be a part of, simply for the fact of the damage that was caused for the gun range being there.
Thank you.
Celeste, I apologize. I apologize. I have to jump off. My next Zoom has started. I got to give a speech, but yeah, Bishop Bobby Hilton here. And like I said, we will continue to work with you, and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reece.
Thank you. Appreciate your leadership.
Thanks.
And the next question will be to Renee. We've been talking about all of the environmental issues and what the lead looks like, and she's been leading our first samples of lead testing around the gun range. So Renee, if you can tell us why you wanted to get involved in this project, and what has been your findings so far from the soil testing?
Well, first of all, can you hear me okay? I'm speaking from my car. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. So first of all, I apologize for being late, but I was at the city hearing on our budget. So what I learned about lead is that the EPA has not really regulated gun ranges over many decades. And therefore, this conversation and understanding of what the lead impacts are to residents in and around the gun range site is critical. And so the Energy and Genetics Institute at the College of Medicine has a citizen science initiative. And so they have trained residents in Lincoln Heights, and those findings will be coming from them this summer. I think to Carlton's point about ensuring that the residents are a part of what happens with that site and what the economic opportunities could be for residents of Lincoln Heights and Woodlawn and the Lincoln Heights community are critical. And so the citizen science is really helping us understand, residents understand the impact, also then understand what they need to advocate for and what resources and tools need to be made available relative to understanding the impacts once those soil samples come back, and potentially also water samples. I think the reason that I got involved is frankly a conversation that took place with Senator Sherrod Brown and Councilmember Daronce Daniels, where he made the conversation public to everyone in a small room. And Senator Brown had experience with a gun range in an upper northern part of Ohio. And so I think that's where the conversation began. And Dr. Earl from UC also started sharing the auditory data. And so, I think I was aware of the gun range, but really didn't understand the impact for auditory as well as potential lead impact until I started researching lead and researching the fact that this statement that shooting firearms is the most common way of gaining lead poisoning in the United States of America. And so when you think about a gun range being located adjacent to residents, households, in some cases 100 to 400 yards, and then recognizing the array of problems that could emit from that exposure, from nausea, fatigue, to organ damage, mental impairment, death, and fetal and neonatal damage. So the fact that citizen science has taken place so that you can now understand what those lead levels look like in and around the gun range, as well as what those emissions, because that's the part I didn't know, that when you shoot a gun, it emits the lead to the air, and those particles are in the air. And so why I'm involved is not just because I'm the president and CEO of the Center for Coast and the Health Gap, but because our people need to be equipped with the knowledge and tools so that we can advocate and ensure that we can make every opportunity for economic parity, justice that impacts our lives, because we do die sooner. We have some of the worst morbidity rates in this country. And until we understand why that is, and in this case with the gun range, when I say you, meaning I think Carlton and Lincoln Heights Movement and Daronce and all involved, standing up, educating, taking your voice to action, and now moving further into, let's look at the science, let's look at what the factors are that could impact our family members that live in this community and surrounding communities for many years to come. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think environmental justice is one of those areas where, when I'm going to conferences around the country, there are some significant efforts going on in environmental justice. I think there's an opportunity to help people better understand, what's in your water, what are you breathing, what are rates of asthma in the neighborhoods that are adjacent to highway systems that are predominantly neighborhoods that we once had homes in, but now highways go through, and the impact of that asthma from the emissions from the car. So there are a lot of environmental factors that are affecting our lives and affecting the disparities that end our lives far too soon.
Thank you, Renee. We look forward to looking at getting those findings. I know the residents have enjoyed being hands-on with testing the soil around their homes, and we look forward to continue to keep them participating in each step of the way. And I think that's a segue to our next question to either the Bill members. We know once this site is moved that it may need to be remediated. And we know that that costs dollars, and there's special skills that go into remediating land. And could you just speak to why it's important that even in those steps that we are inclusive to minorities when we're talking about cleaning up that site?
Sure. So thank you, Celeste, Bobby Hilton, Carlton, Daronce, Shaka, Renee, and of course, our partner in progress, David, at Black Environmental Leaders, as we co-facilitate this amazing organization together. Yeah, Celeste, that really is an amazing question, because oftentimes what will happen is the intersectionality of injustice, it goes through multiple systems, right? So it's not the system that is wrong, right? It is how the system is used and to what end. The purpose of a system is to design it in such a way so that you can predict the outcome. And so as you talk about the remediation of this site and then moving it somewhere else, one thing that is, from an environmental standpoint, very near and dear to our hearts, is to make sure we elevate the point that we don't want this to be relocated to another neighborhood that may not have the political will or the grassroots organizing that is now in Lincoln Heights. Let's take it to a place where no one has to suffer, right? And in that, as we remediate this site, it's important that the contractors that come to remediate the site also represent the demographic of the neighborhood. So then some people say, well, we can't find them. There's no people trained in this. Well, guess what? It's going to be a little while as we work through all of these different legislation, et cetera, et cetera. So how about we start training people now? And how about they start doing remediation, not only for the gun range, but for other places? Because what we know is right now within the construction industry, there is a shortage. And since there is a shortage, how about recruiting individuals who are in Lincoln Heights and other neighborhoods that are similar? And let's move past only having people of color in positions like the flaggers. And don't get me wrong, that's an admirable job. But there's so much more that people of color can do. And it's not just as the employees, it's also as the employers. There are Black organizations and Black businesses that are looking for the chance, ready for the chance. They're under-resourced and they're not allowed to play in this game. Let's open the door. Let's have them be contractors on the remediation. I heard someone earlier say, this is history. History is being written by the choices that are made right now. Let's let this be a full circle example of how we honor the people of Lincoln Heights, how we honor the Black businesses in the community, and how we honor the legacy of those who founded Lincoln Heights 75 years ago by having representation in not only the movement, but the remediation as well.
Great. And I see you getting fired up, Councilman Daniel. So you are next. So once this issue is resolved, what do you see as reparations for the residents of Lincoln Heights? And what would you like to see happen for your residents?
First of all, I just want to say thank everybody on this panel. Thank you, Celeste. And I know Celeste, you understand all the spider webs that are making this take down this lion. So, I stole that from a very special person on this call, but I love that saying. But for the people of Lincoln Heights, first of all, I just want to say what this represents with the removal of this gun range, right? Because you're talking about a community that has been feel like they've been taking gut punches, especially since the 70s. You had a trade deal that took place in the 70s. It took a lot of jobs out of GE. So when you took a lot of jobs away from GE, that was pretty much the tax base of the community of Lincoln Heights. It wasn't very depth, but that was the tax base that we were working with. Move out of the 80s, then you have the crack epidemic that took place, where now you lost a lot of fathers, you lost a lot of folks that got, obviously sick due to being in another pandemic that was the crack epidemic. Moving over to the 90s and the crime bill, the housing, then you have the housing bill in 2000, the housing crisis in 2008. It seems like this Lincoln Heights has been taking hit after hit after hit, and the communities around them have seemed to be able to pick themselves up and actually grown. You got places like Evendale, places like Woodlawn, places like Wyoming, whose property values have grown tremendously. But places like Lincoln Heights, where our property values have dropped 75%, you got to take a step back and say, okay, all these gut punches that we continue to take, is there a systematic plan to take out the first African-American community above the Mason-Dixon line? So the removal and the completion of this removal will show that the people of Lincoln Heights, that they can fight back, right? It was a term that was said today when some of the folks from Lincoln Heights were just speaking, that what we want to do is restore the pride and confidence in the residents of Lincoln Heights. And what that means is that they have the pride and the confidence to fight back in any battle. So on one end, you're just talking about the overall culture and the overall pride of the community of the removal of this gun range. From an economic and environmental standpoint, now you're talking about true growth. You're talking about a space where now it is no longer just a noise nuisance, which, yes, that was obviously the piece, but everybody else has hit upon the traumatic mental piece of it as well, and the environmental piece that has been taking place, that is being removed. So once you take out that barrier, the potential growth that you now have, that is now can take place from an economic standpoint is tremendous as well. And lastly, what I would love to see, and once again, it's just been touched upon it again, is economic and workforce development for our community. The beautiful thing about the residents of Lincoln Heights is I feel like these are some of the most innovative people I have ever seen. And the proof behind it, you could just look at this mural behind me, and it extends 80 feet long. Please come out to Lincoln Heights. I would love to take you out to lunch and I will show it to you in person. But man, if you talk about the true pride and the innovation that's come out of this community, you're talking about people who moved from Jim Crow South into a city of Cincinnati who could not buy land, now had to take that adverse situation, found a community, bought that land, and was innovative enough to say, you know what, we can't get jobs as firemen. We can't get jobs as police chiefs. We can't get elected mayors. So what are we going to do? We're going to start our own. Take that same innovative bloodline, that same innovative mindset, and move it into 2021, and now use that space and use that area, the same as GE is using as well, as long as they're aerospace hub, but similar to what we're talking about, the true innovation of allowing the residents to solve the problems in a space and having a true communal opportunity to solve the problems that move us forward. We're doing something similar now in a very, very small scale, but I think the removal of this, and I'm sorry that was a long-winded answer, but all you guys got me fired up, because when you're talking about Lincoln Heights, you're talking about the true, once again, it's almost a reflection of the African-American experience when you're talking about Lincoln Heights and the true totality of it. So now, and Bishop Bobby Hilton hit upon it when you're talking about history, but the removal of this, I think from a nationwide standpoint, now shows us, moving after the unfortunate death of George Floyd, that we can come together and truly do big things. That not just the death of George Floyd, not just the death of Breonna Taylor, not, the list goes on, but the movement that came out of that can result in true positive impact for the community of not just Lincoln Heights, but the African-American community. Because Renee just touched on it, we're doing it ourselves. Obviously we have help, but it's ourselves picking ourselves up and saying we have a problem. So sorry about that, Celeste, but you got to blame the panel, because they're the ones that got me fired up on that one. So, but man, I appreciate you all.
Great. Carlton, I'll ask you the same question. What do you want to see as the outcome for the residents of Lincoln Heights?
For us, or for me, it goes directly back to where we started. And we started this as a conversation, is Daronce as coach and mentor, me serving the kids in the after school and summer camp. It started with the youth, right? And, so we also had the fortunate opportunity to launch My Brother's Keeper Lincoln Heights. So the first My Brother's Keeper chapter connected with the Obama Foundation in the Cincinnati area. And it is an absolute blessing to have that. But one of the things that was required of us was also determining a policy initiative that we wanted to focus on. And that policy initiative for us is juvenile justice. So one of the things that, when we're talking about the permanence of a gun range, the permanence of creation of, some mental health challenges, some just those additional stressors or whatever the case is. And people know, if you're from Cincinnati area, people from Lincoln Heights, we go from 0 to 100 really quickly. But that's also led to some very key and specific things in regards to our involvement with the criminal justice system, right? So we chose juvenile justice because there's some things that we need to reverse and we need to work towards. But the only way that can happen, right, when they talk about adverse childhood experiences, they say the solution to dealing with too many adverse childhood experiences is a caring adult. And that only comes in the form of, additional resources that go towards the support and development of youth in the community of Lincoln Heights. So being able to pour back into the community in that way, one, not only just serves the kids who are there and who have dealt with it for a lifetime, but now you're talking about changing the trajectory of the next generation, right? They go off, they go to college, they do those jobs. And if we do what we're supposed to do in terms of the Heights movement, they get to come back to a community in Lincoln Heights that is better situated to support them as homeowners, to support them as parents, and whatever the case may be. So what I would say, in terms to answer the question directly, I just wanted to provide a little context, but to answer that question directly, right, I believe that we should be immediately tapped into asset forfeiture dollars that the city of Cincinnati has every single year. It is distributed by Joe Dieters as the prosecutor. And they already go to programs that support, anti-drug use and youth programming initiatives, right? There should be a certain amount of those dollars, portion that comes back to the community, to the village of Lincoln Heights and to Woodlawn, specifically to support youth development. And those dollars be distributed equally, whether it's a recreation department, whether it's other organizations that are youth serving, but how do we improve the resources that are available to support this next generation? And I feel like those dollars should exist 18 years beyond the last gunshot fired.
Great, thank you. So we do have some questions coming in through text. So people are fired up. The first question is to Renee. And the question is, would closing the health gap have the capacity to do training for individuals who are interested in remediation of that site?
Well, that is definitely something I would be interested in exploring. Yes, we would have the capacity in working with UC. I don't know what it, so I'm not an environmental, I don't have that environmental expertise. However, I am definitely willing to pursue what it would take to understand what that training entails and building a train the trainer that would be specific to the residents of Lincoln Heights. I'm sorry, I'm driving now. So, but I don't know if that's a response, but yes, we would have the capacity. I just don't know what it would take. But I'm definitely willing to pursue it and work with our academic partners to expand citizen science beyond just, lead testing, but how we actually build skill sets that lead to economic opportunity.
Great, thank you. And the next question is to Bishop Hilton. Does the office of the county commissioner have capacity to support efforts to have more inclusion when it comes to remediation of sites?
I would say yes to that. I would say yes to that. We are talking about inclusion all the time. Matter of fact, they were talking about $500,000 expenditure just today at our meetings to study, to do the disparity study, and to make sure the inclusion is happening everywhere throughout the county. And it's so very important, and we were talking about some history, and I can recall when Lincoln Heights went across the expressway before 75 was built there. Lincoln Heights crossed that expressway. Lincoln Heights was over on that GE property. And, and there's been so many things to happen that I just have to say has robbed the people of what was rightfully theirs. And it's time for this stuff to come back. I like what Carlton said. And all we have to do is start putting some efforts together. When they get all of these millions of dollars from funds that they're getting from drug takebacks and all of that, there should be a certain percentage, because Joe Dieters is the Hamilton County prosecutor. Okay, Lincoln Heights and Woodlawn are in Hamilton County. Why not have a certain percentage automatically feeding these communities? These communities have been done wrong. There's no other way to put it. They have been mistreated. And I think there is no greater time than right now. Yes, the county's put up to $5 million. The city needs to come forth. And also, the site that they're looking at is already a gun range. It's Colerain Township. It's the sheriff's department. It's owned by Hamilton County already. So what they're looking at doing is expanding it on the land that they already have so that it will serve federal, state, local, several municipalities as a gun range. The range is already there, and we're ready to expand this thing. There's no greater opportunity than right now to get this thing done. And if we don't stand up as a people and say, wait a minute, you all owe us this, and we shouldn't have to beg for it. Let's just put some things together and make sure it happens. And a financial flow. When they move the gun range, that can't be the end of the story. As you said, that cannot be the end of the story. There needs to be a financial flow put in place to give back to the community what has been stolen from them over the years.
Well, Bishop Hilton, I just want to touch a real expansive thought to that. It is not alien when we're talking about things like this for those types of benefits to be for longer than 18 years. I would dare put on the table, why not start with perpetuity? Why not start with perpetuity? That benefit, that carve out, that benefit be available to the residents of Lincoln Heights, because the impacts of this will impact those family members for perpetuity. That the gun range and the effects of it impacted that community, or is impacting the Lincoln Heights community for 70 plus years. That's close to 100 years, which is close to 4 generations. That type of an impact will take multiple generations to recover. And so I just want to put on the table, why not start with asking for those benefits for perpetuity?
Amen.
Thank you. I said amen. So I want to be mindful of time, so we're going to close off. So I'll get everyone's closing thoughts, and I'll start with Councilman Daniels.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'm brief. No, once again, I just want to thank everybody for this, because every time I'm with you, I always learn something new, in a different capacity, one capacity or another. But just my final thoughts is that I'm just speaking to the residents of Lincoln Heights, or any resident that has been affected by this. There's been a conversation on, why the gun range, with so many different things going on in the village of Lincoln Heights. Why take on this battle, right? Well, once again, I think it shows a symbolism for us as a community. This is something that we all can come together and get around. All of us have kids. I think we all can agree that our kids should no longer have to listen to this anymore. And once again, I apologize, panel. I am talking to the residents of Lincoln Heights right now, and I'll leave off of this note. But just think about it. We can now say, potentially, that no kid will ever have to hear another gunshot in the community of Lincoln Heights ever again. Because I'll even say it to all this, I'll leave it on this note. The crimes that have taken place in the community of Lincoln Heights over the last 2 months, I hope our Vice Mayor she'll attest to this. Those people have come from outside the village of Lincoln Heights. The gunshots that have been taking place as well, like the most of them, haven't come from Cincinnati Police Department. So once again, you're talking about the violence that have been taking place, whether it's criminal or whether it's training, has been residents from the outside of the community. So why is this important, guys? Because once again, I think it is imperative that our kids no longer have to hear the sound of gunshots anymore. So that's why I'll just leave it at that.
Great. And Carlton, your final thoughts?
First and foremost, just thank you to Black environmental leaders. Thank you to Hamilton County Commission. Thank you, Celeste, because you got this turned up in a whole nother way for us. And thank you, Center for Closing the Health Gap, because you've just been instrumental in just a positive force for us, right? Encouraging us, correcting us, and doing everything in between. But I would say, I really want us to take a serious look into the damage that's caused, right? It was really, really easy to get people on board for the conversation of let's just move it. But now we have to get into an intentional conversation about repair. What does that look like? Samia, you made an amazing point about perpetuity. And I was just saying the minimum needs to be 18 years. At bare minimum, take care of the babies. But let's look at what does that look like? And also keeping in mind, right, that after the Timothy Thomas riot, you talk about 01, there was an intentional process that was embarked upon. And, you could say begrudgingly or not, because Queen Iris checked me on that one time. But there was an intentional process that was embarked upon, right, between the residents of Cincinnati and the police department. And out of that, what spawned is that we became this beacon of light to teach other police departments how they can improve their community relations, community police relations. What we have to do now, if that became, the moniker, so to speak, or the calling card of Cincinnati Police, and they took leadership in that way, this is an opportunity to take leadership again, right? And it's a perfect opportunity to, one, see the city and the county working together. That's just beautiful. I know we all want more of that. But really seeing an opportunity for the city of Cincinnati to be focused on recompense, for the damage that has been caused, and more importantly, give an opportunity for a new relationship in terms of Lincoln Heights, that Lincoln Heights residents and I call them Lincoln Heights alumni have with police, right? Because it's hard to have a good relationship with police when they're firing guns and that's part of your existence growing up, right? So now there's an opportunity for a new type of relationship to be established. And it gives us an opportunity to move forward in a new way. And you can just add it to the consulting portfolio, City of Cincinnati, of things you offer in terms of the way that you've dealt with community relations.
Great. And Renee, your closing thoughts. You're on mute.
Okay, my closing thought is to the question that was asked of me. I think the opportunity is taking all of the conversation that has been had and determining a plan around the economic revitalization of Lincoln Heights that is borne by not only the conversations about how there should be some kind of restitution, but also how the conversation about remediation and all of the other environmental positions that are available and skill sets that can be taught to residents of Lincoln Heights so that there can be an economic base built, an opportunity for economic growth for the people that live there now, for the kids that are growing up in Lincoln Heights, to learn skills that are around the environmental fields and health. And so I think that should be an intentional strategy that comes from a variety of places, but I think that's something that should be asked for. So when I was asked the question about remediation, I would be happy to develop a train the trainer that would teach that skill. But I think it's time to make sure that that site, when it is cleared from being a gun range, leads to economic opportunity for Lincoln Heights residents and Woodlawn residents as well. So that's my parting thought.
Thank you. And Bishop Hilton.
I have a granddaughter. When she was a toddler, 2 and 3 years old, she had a health condition that when she heard a loud sound, it would scare her so bad that she would just run and hide, and we would have to grab her and hold her and comfort her and let her know everything was okay. It troubles me to think how many children in Lincoln Heights suffer with the same health condition that my granddaughter suffered with. And when they would hear those sounds, it would just tear something horrible off on the inside of them. And who, outside of the people in this panel and others in Lincoln Heights, how many people have even cared? How many people have even paused and thought about the damage that's happening to the youth, and the youth grow up? And sometimes people wonder, well, what's wrong with them? Well, why are they acting this way? How deep does this go? The reason I am confident that something is about to happen is when I look at how you have gathered your people here today, and when I look at what has already happened. When I first sit down with some major players in the city of Cincinnati, it was no, we can't do it. We don't have money. It was nothing but no's. But I can tell you that has absolutely changed. That has changed. And it's you all that's helping this thing change. And so now is the time to keep moving toward a conclusion. The county has that $5 million on the table, but it will not move until agreements begin to come together and say, okay, we can get this done. And so you have a great committee of people. One thing I know about the Center for Closing the Health Gap, you can put anything in front of them. Ms. Renee was talking about what she wasn't familiar with, but I tell you, you give them any kind of assignment, in a couple of days, they're coming back with some conclusions. So you all, from what I've heard and from what I see, you all are about to get this thing done, and I'm honored to be a part of stepping up with you.
And last but not least, our Bill members for acknowledging us down here in Cincinnati and making us a part and launching your Black Landscapes Matter series.
I'll just jump in and say it has, as I said from the very beginning, it has been an honor to be in this space and to be able to really amplify you know, the issues and just the energy and the passion that is being generated by this conversation and the efforts that have been going on in the Lincoln Heights community now for decades. You know, we had the opportunity to actually write about this in the Cincinnati City Beat a couple weeks ago, and really ask the question, what is environmental justice? This is something that I think that you know, as a society, we have been grappling with now. You know, in the wake of the quote unquote racial awakening that we experienced last year, and the effects, the overwhelming effects of a global pandemic that have negatively impacted communities of color, you know, across the world. And really, you know, when we talk about environmental justice, and Celeste, you were the first one to bring up, you know, the term of reparations. How do you repair generations, 70 plus years of generational trauma? I mean, it's economic justice. It is about making the community whole through the actions of not only the, you know, Carlton, Daronce, what we see here, but coming together, uniting around this as a community. And I'm just going to quickly read just a few words, but you know, economic justice is being able to live in a place where the only choices aren't between gunshots and taking your children to the park. It's the right to live in an environment where the soil, water, and air are clean from lead. That is the base right there. And it is about addressing that generational trauma by not repeating the mistakes of the past. And it is also an understanding that the inherited decisions of the past do not need to be maintained in the future. And above all, and this is going to be my last point, it sees the humanity and the interconnectedness in all of us, that we are not apart from nature, but we are part of nature itself. Thank you for this opportunity. And we look forward to not only elevating this discussion, but discussions like this all across the state of Ohio as well.
Yeah, and I just want to I have a special guest right here. I'm going to ask her to come into the screen. This is my daughter, and we did a lot of talking about the next generation. And I am a second generation daughter of a migrant from the Jim Crow South. And that's why we do this work. And we do this work so that she doesn't have to endure the things that we have. And so my final word tonight is thank you everyone for your hard work, your dedication, because there wouldn't be a conversation had the people of Lincoln Heights not come here, established a municipality, and then said, we will stand for our municipality to be treated on par with every other one in the state of Ohio. So I leave you with this. It says momentum. A little push in the right direction can make a big difference. We're moving in the right direction. Let us not stop here.
This has been an amazing panel. Thank you all for joining. Thank you to the village council and the village mayor for, you know, working on this diligently behind the scenes. Get ready, city council and mayors. We're coming for you next. If you know me, we will not stop until you all make a move. The county has made the example. So look forward to this being a major issue in our city election. And thank you all for your commitment to continue to advocate for the residents of Lincoln Heights. And we will be seeing you real soon. Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you, Celeste.
Thank you.
all.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes.